Salutations, and a very warm welcome to everyone here today. Before we continue, please pardon me as I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Aqeil Syazwan. I'm currently attending SMK Syrian as a Form 5 student. Reading has been a frequent pastime of mine, and speaking of which, today I'd like to discuss with you all a book that I've read, which is Reading Shine's Steve Jobs. Steve, mostly known as tenure at Apple, being the CEO and founder of it, and releasing products such as the Apple iPhone, the Apple iPod, and the Apple MacBook. This book delves deeper into his personal life, his backstory, and his background. It starts off with Steve being born in San Francisco, California, and being put for adoption to four Ankara jobs, a machinist and accountant separately. Residing in Mountain View, California, with two other siblings, Steve, during his elementary school years, always had consistently good grades, and because of that, he was known for being a bit of a prankster, even to the point where he was bribed by his teachers just so he could sit down and behave. And because of his consistently good grades, he skipped 5th grade and moved into middle school, though with a caveat being a little bit younger than his peers, often leading to bullying. Because of this, Steve requested his parents to move him to a different school, and to that, they transferred him to Carrington Junior High. After his time there, he moved over to Homestead High School, where there, a friend of his introduced him to what would now be known as one of his most famous collaborators, being Stefan Wozniak, or most famously known, Steve Woz. After they met, they joined a computer club together, continued their antics, continued to learn more about the computers, and deepened their bond together. After his time in Homestead High School, he decided to continue further pursuing his education to Reed College, a liberal arts college, though to the dismay of his parents. Though after a couple months, he dropped out and decided to find a job residing in Atari, and at the same time, Stephen Wozniak resided in Hewlett Packard, or mostly known as HP. Coincidentally, at the same time, Intel, one of the most famous technology brands out there, decided to release what will now be known as one of the most revolutionary chips of our modern era, the Intel 8080. And with that came a lot of prototypes for what will now be known as the basis or the backbone of modern personal computers. One of the more famous ones being the Altair 8800. Steve Wozniak, during his free time, used the Altair 8800 as a side project, upgrading it, tinkering with it. And when Steve Jobs heard the news, he was fascinated by the possibilities of this new era of computing. With that, they continued to upgrade and tinker with the Altair 8800, and then release what would now be known as the first prototype of the Apple I to a surprisingly warm fanfare. And because of this, Steve decided to go all in and find a couple of investors and recruits to start up a technology brand, a new one, which would now be known as Apple Inc. With Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak headlining the brand, they decided to continue upgrading the Apple I, and a couple months later, during a convention, they showcased what their new product would be, which is the Apple II. An overwhelmingly positive support came onto them because of its simplicity, yet technologically advanced systems at the time. This book talks more about Steve Jobs after his career with the Apple II, his ups, his downs, his firing, his coming back to Apple, and a couple of his other brands. But I decided to cut it up for today because I recommend you all to read this book for yourselves. Sure, it's a book targeted for the demographic of 11-year-olds, but there is no shame for anyone at any age to read a book like this. A 70-page short caricatured biography, which is so high quality, it's definitely not a book you should miss. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you all for watching, and see you soon.